All right, hey everyone. I'm Biggie. I am the general manager of your last place, Boston Shoreman. Um, and we're doing our week in review. And because I was busy, it's actually a 2 weeks in review, 2 weeks in a day. And because scheduling conflicts, I'm rocking solo. I'm flying solo. So what we're gonna do is kind of a variation of what we've done before. So we're gonna look at the standings, go over some teams. Um, And historically, we've gone through trades. Well, there have been about 6 million trades, and we also had a draft. And so a lot of the trades involved, picks that were, on the clock and stuff like that. So we're not going to go over every single one because I don't want to be here for the next 8 hours of my life. So instead, I have a list, and it's an incomplete list, but it's a list of players that the teams added. And so what I just did is I just went up the trade channel, and if the trade smelled like a deadline deal, then I added it, and I have my list of players. And so when we go through, like I have 3 guys for Toronto and Cleveland, 2 guys for New York, 2 guys for Kentucky, that type of thing. And we're gonna mention them, and we're gonna, well, just me. I'm gonna vibe a little bit and say if I think these are gonna help the teams do what they want to do. Um, and we're not going to discuss the draft mostly because that's a very big topic in and of itself. That probably, in a perfect world, would definitely deserve its own talk. But hey, time is of the essence. So hey, let's dive into it. Um, so right now, the date in game is July 20th. When we last talked, it was May 10th. And so just for a little bit of a comparison, we can use this up here to flip through time. So we had essentially like the first week in review, where my team still had hope. Um, but you can see like Cleveland, Toronto, and New York, the top three really hasn't changed. DC has just crept up, which I think everybody was expecting. Um, so other than that, I still am in the bottom three. Kentucky's in the bottom three. I forget what's the other team in the bottom three. Minnesota, and they I guess they fell a little bit, but I think in the PL specifically, this is not a surprise. Ooh, Phoenix and New York are tied. Am I up to date? They are tied. Interesting. Because I would have had the same top four as last year, which is this top four, with New York as a very close fifth. So this top five makes a lot of sense to me. That there's like, definitely the top tier teams, the DC, Toronto, Cleveland. Then there's the Phoenix and New York, which are like still really good, but they're like, in the PL B tier teams. Then there's the C tier of New Orleans, Cincinnati, Minnesota, and then there's a D tier, Kentucky, and then there's the F tier, my team. I want to talk about my team a little bit because I can. What the hell happened? So last year we were over 500, and we brought back a very similar team that has absolutely not been good. Like you look at Jerry Martinez, he went from being a 114 WRC plus to a 50. Like let's be honest. And I platoon this guy. So there's a couple things. Is one, he had some negative development, but like what the fuck is this? I mean, not to like. Hopefully your kids aren't listening. Like what is this luck? A 50? That's like what a pitcher does. And you look at Russell Rhodes. He you look at this hitter at a 91. Like what is happening here? That's just not. This is disgusting. You look at Joe Beaumont, who played for DC and put up a 128 and my guy's league average. Okay, that one's not too bad. Um, Cortez, I can't complain about. Ben Kist is a guy I'm going to complain about though, because he was league average with his bat last year. He comes here in his ass. Like, what the fuck is up? Like, I'm going to fire my hitting coach. David Neal, he went from being a respectable catcher to dog. Like, what am I looking at? It's not even like he's not rested. It's not like our team chemistry is ass. Like, I don't even know what's happened to my team. Like, my team, if you want your player to have a horrible season, you come to Boston. I'm venting, but I'm just very upset. Um, so I got rid of my second baseman and my pitcher, which we will talk about later. But a little part of me wants to say like my team isn't this bad, but like apparently we are, and I have decided that I do want to sell everybody a value, and I'm going to go to the Bronze League and I'm going to um, get some draft picks. Like I drafted this guy with one of my picks this year. I'm hoping he'll be like a decent third baseman. And another guy that I picked up was John Plummer, who he's really a DH. And is Eddie Hill seriously hurt? Okay, no, because this is a guy I kind of have some hope for. Um, Other guys, Solis, I got in a trade this year as well. Who these are young guys. They have enough ratings. He was a part of the West Copping deal, which I got rid of. So enough about me though. That's just my venting. Um, let's talk about the players that were added by the teams. Let's start with Toronto. Um, I believe these guys. Okay, these were not on my list. Um, but the number one guy I have added, I don't see, and because I'm a genius, I did not put down their position. Um, Maybe. Oh, he was traded again. All right. Well, I'm really on the ball. So this was a guy who I think got traded twice. Then gotcha. Okay. Then let's skip around to the next guy, Brandon Marshall. Brandon Marshall is I'd say a very notable acquisition, especially for a team making a push. Bit of a storied history with this player. Um, Obviously, he won an MVP. Uh, it says he only has one championship. He actually won two. Um, so if you look at him in the postseason, this maybe he didn't. I might have to ask. Oh, it's broken up, so it's a little hard to tell. But I know that he won at least one tournament of champions with Carolina. I'm pretty sure it's two, and I'm pretty sure, yeah, it was this 2066 season where he beat my team. And then ever since then, for the past 5 years, it's been a downhill slide. But this used to be one of the most feared hitters in the league. Started off crazy strong at a very young age. Then between 2066 and 2067, we switched to out of the park 23, and he was a shadow of the player he was before. He actually had a crazy contract where he was making $50 million a year, and then he opted out of it, and then he signed with Phoenix, who then flipped him to uh, Toronto. So I guess Brandon Marshall just wants to win, and he's had a good year, especially considering he had a pretty bad 2070. I was shocked when he opted out because you're talking about a guy who put up not even one WAR, who opted out of $50 million because he I guess just really did not want to be in the Silver League. Um, but I would say this is a good acquisition. He's kind of refound this stroke a little bit. Not he's never gonna be an MVP candidate, but he's having a good year. You ride the wave. Um, Another guy is Parkley or Parky. Okay, so one of probably the trade that sent away. Um, Different deal. All right, just a really solid relief pitcher. Well, ratings wise, it should be, but when we look at his year, it hasn't been pretty. Even last year, this has not been pretty. I wonder if he has crazy splits. You look at this guy and you think he should perform well. Has he at least had it? Okay, he has had like one good year. If you're Toronto, you pick up this guy because you can at least say convince yourself that he's going to be a change of scenery candidate. Um, Very interesting. He's not even striking out guys with an 80 stuff. Is my scout bad? I like the acquisition. You can't knock it. I mean, this is a guy who passes the eye test, but just has bad ratings. And I guess if you're Bob, you're hoping. Bob's the manager of Toronto. You're hoping he can help your bullpen ERA, which I guess is his weak link. Pierce Andrew. Let's talk about him for a second. Probably the best pitcher in the history of the league. 1.83 ERA. Um, Yikes. On track for his seventh pitcher of the year. Let's compare it to his rival, um, Cleveland's Bobby Cortez. This is probably my favorite pitcher in the league, but I think Cortez has the better FIP but lower ERA. Cortez was reigning pitcher of the year. Um, Very interesting that Pierce Andrews like outperforming by ERA. Both are still really, really good pitchers. But Cleveland made some acquisitions. The first one on my list that I see, and Ryan Chamberlain. Um, this might not have been processed. Uh-oh. Well, we're gonna roll with it. Let's pretend Houston did acquire this guy. Yeah, it's a pretty solid pitcher to acquire. Pretty good FIP. Um, ERA is very much under it, and I'm not sure what was paid. Maybe I just mistyped this. The deal fell through or something. But I think this type of pitcher is a type of pitcher that's pretty in vogue for out of the park 23. No idea why he hasn't pitched better. You would think with 3.5 pitches he'd be fine, but if Cleveland did acquire him, a good deal. And then another thing that I want to think is worth mentioning is Pat Minges. He was a top draft pick, um, second overall by LA, and he is in Cleveland on loan. And so he has not performed well in the Premier League. Did he did fine in the minor leagues, I guess. He kind of got rushed up, and I get why you would want to loan out Minges if you're Los Angeles, and why you'd want to get him. I considered asking to loan him out before the season began. The reason why I didn't is because he is not fully cooked, and that's the risk. But the reward is going to be that you have a really good defensive center fielder who could hit maybe a little bit, and that's why I like the pick at second overall. Um, I there might be a couple other guys that were added by. Um, yeah, this is not going to be too. Oh, and Kaneko, I almost went right over him. This was a big guy. He's my guy. I traded him away a day or two ago, where he has been on a tear. I complain about everybody on my team sucking. This dude has been the light and the darkness, I guess. But of course, he's a free agent after the year. He also had a no trade clause, so a lot of teams he simply couldn't go to. So I did not get great returns. I think this is 100% a trade that was won by Cleveland. I think this is a hitter that you're going to want in your lineup. He gave me a third round pick and Ryo, who, you know, probably doesn't have the arm for center field, but just a guy who you squint and you can say, okay, maybe he'll be good. He'll plead this gap, this speed, and this range. He'll carve out a role for himself. He's played well this year so far. So they got Kaneko as well. So I think Kaneko is a pretty good acquisition. Um, I think Minges, I see it, and assuming they did get Chamberlain, I think that's a good pickup. I wonder if that trade just hasn't been processed. Either that or I'm just a giant hack. New York acquired Zuniga recently. Uh, Interesting guy for a reliever. At least for me personally, this is not what I was hoping for. This is very much like a starter's build. Um, has not had a very pretty FIP in his 6 innings so far, but was playing very well in the Bronze League. You know, put however much stock you want to put in that. Um, I wonder what the view is with him. Maybe it's just that, hey, they need bodies in the bullpen, but you really don't need that many guys. Um, this is another guy that they picked up, Messier. Um, so I guess they're trying to reinvent their bullpen. Is that their weak link? Not particularly, because this guy's new, and then they also picked up. I want to check out Mike Rumpf. Okay, I got distracted. But the story with Mike Rumpf is that he magically developed a third pitch that was 80 grade and went from being just a bullpen guy to a starter. And he has pitched very well. So that is like the god tier talent change randomness. The starters have been okay. Um, Andy Parker, not super sick. Tim Price, I like Tim Price. Um, Burford, he's a lefty, so he's going to outperform his ratings, which he has so far. So I like Burford. Klein, you see the vision, you know. I think he's got to be better than this ERA. So good team in they, but I also have listed that they picked up Mike Brown, um, their shortstop. Okay, gotcha. I'm up to speed with myself now. Who's their shortstop now? Mike Brown. Who was their shortstop before? Is probably the better question. Um, Looks like they really didn't have a solid. Cause this guy had a couple reps, but so I guess that was their empty spot. And so let's take a look at Mike Brown for half a second. Um, Making his major league debut after being traded from Mexico City. 2070, he hit well. 2071, he has not so far. But this glove, passes the eye test. Does he have good splits? No, I think the issue with him, if he had good speed, I think he'd probably hit better. But when your best offensive skill is gap and you don't have speed, you're kind of going to be limited. I don't know what he got to acquire him, but if you have nothing there, Mike Brown is definitely better than nothing. So I think in that sense alone, good pickup. Let's take a look at his stats real quick. Good glove. You cannot really complain too much about that at all. And then finally, the other teams haven't really done anything, or they've gotten rid of players. I know Phoenix has actually traded away some players. Um, and I think we're going to look at two of those guys now on Kentucky. One of the guys that I see on my list is Jose Martinez, who I am blind. He might not have been processed yet. He has been processed. I'm just blind. He's traded with Toronto. Okay, not Phoenix, but uh, you look at this, and you know what? Serviceable starter. He has that movement. I guess the hope is he's pitched fairly well um, in the reserves. I'm not sure what Kentucky's rotation looks like. Pretty rough. Jose Martinez. I mean, very low risk acquisition. He's 29. He's still through a rookie eligibility. I think the goal with Kentucky is to simply not get relegated or to at least not fall to below me because and these two teams right now would play each other. So in that sense, hey, for a fifth starter, not too bad. And then the other guy right here from Toronto, not Phoenix. So it turns out I got faulty memory. Um, Looks like a solid player. Decent enough glove. He has speed and he has a little bit of gap, so that should play fairly well. He's hit fairly well for Toronto this year. In his first 2 weeks or 2 or 3 weeks in Kentucky, he's continued that trend. Um, he has a lot of service time left. Looks like a solid acquisition. Both of those guys, I mean, they're a better team than I am. I'm dead last in both hitting and pitching, so I'd be shocked if Kentucky falls to 10th place. Um, and plus, they have McElia, who's probably not going to be ready this year. But assuming, they stave off um, relegation, might be ready this time next year. They have Rafael Lopez, who's going to be a free agent. So interesting spot to be in. Um, but two acquisitions to stay out of the 10th place spot. All right. Then we're going to go to the Silver League, where we do have our. So let's take a look at the standings right now. We have Detroit on top with Indianapolis and Las Vegas in that 2 and 3 slot. And then Miami looking to go to the Bronze League. Vancouver and Carolina. Vancouver's being called home, and Carolina is looking to avoid the Bronze League. And I know they're trying to avoid it because we're going to go over some of the acquisitions they made. So again, right now it's the 20th of July. Let's go back to the 10th of May. Completely different view. Well, not really, I guess. Detroit was still on top. Indianapolis and Las Vegas were still good. Tampa Bay was a team that I had a little bit more faith in coming into the season. Miami at the bottom. Vancouver and Carolina not far from the bottom. Chicago's trended up. So going back to today, I would say that this is probably a pretty solid top three. These Indianapolis and Vegas might flip 2 and 3, but Detroit's probably gonna win. Miami is definitely getting relegated. And between Carolina and Vancouver, who knows? The only acquisition I have listed for a top three team was Mike Stafford, who is a very notable acquisition. Historically, he's been one of the better hitting catchers in the league. Um, Minnesota signed him. He was a New York guy for a very long time. Had a very good season. Had multiple very good seasons actually. Just a very very good hitter. Um, and has been having a bad year. I mean, this is a Hall of Fame guy, and he still has a couple years left. Let's take a look at this contract real quick. Has a player option and it is retained 100%. But this is a good pickup for a playoff spot, especially a good hitting catcher who I'm not sure what they paid for, but you got him fully retained. Um, you can't complain about it too much. And Minnesota, let's just go back to the um, bold to trade him. They got Peterson, who's going to play for them now. Maybe you just have that much faith that you're going to either beat Kentucky or that you're going to, you know, flip with New Orleans and Cincinnati. But let's go back, to the Silver League. That's a very notable pickup for Las Vegas and a pickup I really like. Houston made some deals. They picked up Victor Cortez, who let me see if I can see him. He was probably traded. No, my luck. He's a minor league guy, so they did trade for him. Turns out I got my notes wrong. He was dealt for Jared Dobson, who's a minor league guy. All right, so we can just glance over that. But he looks like he had a good glove, and they also picked up Dobson. That was the other guy on my list. Um, oops, I am all over the place right now. Let's take one more look at Dobson, if I can find him. Oh, he's in the minor leagues too, wasn't he? All right, then we're going to move on to Carolina, who made about 18 different trades. Uh, they are trying to avoid relegation. They picked up Ken Rolston from Phoenix, and that's what I meant when I said earlier that Phoenix was dealing away guys. Um, Interesting pickup. He's got him for the final bit of his service time. He's been a league average pitcher, we'll say. He's a lefty. I like Ken Rolston. Um, his ratings aren't super sexy, but when you're a lefty, you're going to outperform. And we're seeing that he is, not since he was, since he's been able to drink, he's been a solid pitcher. So it's a good pickup for Carolina. That will, definitely help them out a little bit. They also picked up, let's see who else. There's a very long list. So Ryan Sweetapple, I'm sure there's been a lot of deals. He was already dealt again. Or maybe this trade hasn't been processed yet, but they picked up a reliever. Looks like a pretty decent reliever, another lefty, like that deal. And Jaden Moore. This trade has been processed. Looks like a shortstop with some pop. Another guy they got from Phoenix. Um, had a very good 2070, had a very good 2069. His 2071, though, not super great. But you will. Oh, how much of this contract did he pick up? I don't know if this is a loan or not because I um, did not do my homework. But interesting pickup, especially as far as shortstops go. Probably more of a third baseman, but hey, who's their third baseman right now? Frazier Prince. Um, yeah, so you're gonna put Jaden Moore at shortstop. It doesn't hurt to pick up that bat. Another guy I have listed is Emmett Dale right down here. Looks like a solid reliever. You can't complain too much. Duncan, the GM of Carolina, picked up a righty. Very rare to see that one happen. Um, but looks fine. Passes the eye test. The next guy that got picked up is a guy named Dustin Nicholson. Reliever again. A righty again. Has just cracked into the big leagues for the first time. Has pitched well so far. It looks okay. Doesn't look like anything special. Acquired him from DC, but hey, he'll be serviceable to help them stay out of the Bronze League. Um, Raul Cara Raul. I'm not gonna try to pronounce that. Another reliever, another righty. Um, Free agent. You know, Good, not great. Um, Actually, he has been pretty solid out of the bullpen. These numbers are fine. You're not going to complain with a sub 3 ERA. So maybe that is a better pickup than my initial gut check. Um, I credited him for. Mike Dye, another reliever. Man is reinventing his entire bullpen. This is a guy I like. I like that he's a lefty, so he'll outperform the relatively lower stuff. Um, Pitched well in the minor leagues. You really can't complain about that one too much. I don't know what to give up. Andrew Wallace, a starter. Um, interesting looking guy. Seems fairly well rounded. Um, didn't pitch super great in the Premier League for Phoenix, um, but I think in the Silver League he'll be fine. See if this guy though, if he was a lefty, he'd probably be a number three, but he's a righty, so he's probably number 4 or 5. But for a Silver League in the Premier League, so for a Silver League team though, I think that's a solid pickup. Um, there's some other guys too. I got a long list for Carolina. Let me just scroll over. I got two more guys to go through for him. Jerry Highland, that closer, a lefty. This is a really good pitcher. Um, Kind of having a rough, had a rough beginning to Carolina, but pitched very, very well for Phoenix, and he was with Carolina before, so he's coming home, I guess. Um, but yeah, this is just a solid reliever, good guy that you want in your bullpen. Then the final guy is Jason Wendell. Um, Another reliever. So Carolina, I guess, is going. Let's see. The only guys we didn't talk about were Josh Krantz and Alexis Miranda. So a lot of pitching has come into Carolina recently. I don't know about hitting. Oh, they acquired the shortstop, right? Unless I'm absolutely going nuts. Yeah, Jaden Moore. Okay, so they did acquire a little bit of hitting. Um, I think that should be enough. I'm surprised Vancouver didn't buy because Vancouver, I believe, got promoted last year and looks like they're going to head back. Because right now, at least with the acquisitions, like, I mean, if you're Carolina, I mean, you can rely on your bullpen now within that relegation series. So, um, all right, down to the Bronze League to wrap it all up. We're kind of still, I guess, running a little late on time. I was trying to go for 30 minutes, but oh no. Okay. Where we are now, we got Galveston on top, which I personally was not predicting at the beginning of the season, with San Diego second and then a tie for third for between Winnipeg and Atlanta. I thought Atlanta and Orlando would be a little higher than they were, but Galveston, I guess, is kind of taking the BL by surprise. Let's talk about where we were when we last left off. Galveston was up top, Orlando was up top, Winnipeg was up top. The bottom has shifted a little bit, but I know for Philadelphia and Los Angeles and Mexico City, this is very much the plan. The only acquisitions I have, Galveston really didn't make any, but they're very, very good. And they still are very, very young. Very good position to be in. So you look at San Diego real quick. They're also very, very young. Oh, hey, can I have him? Hey, who knows if he'll develop like this, especially because he's nearly 20 and he is still at 25, 25. I mean, that's fairly old to be that this bad. Um, at least present. Maybe I'm being a hater. Um, but you can see it, and you can see the vision. Let's look at Winnipeg, another team that is very, very young, but their guys are up all in Winnipeg. Um, the draft class has been imported, but I don't think it's been reflected in the top prospects. So Winnipeg made an acquisition. It might not have been processed. Oh, I lied. They did make an acquisition, but we're going to come to them later. No, we'll go in order. Their acquisition was Barry Wilburn. Um, Lefty pitcher who I like. I like that in general. Good fit, good performances so far in the minor leagues with the Philadelphia though. I guess Philadelphia's like, hey, he has value that I won't be using, so take him off my hands. Um, Not a bad pitcher to add, especially considering that he's young and he'll have 6 more years of control. I don't know how well he will do. I mean, this is not a Premier League pitcher, but this is a someone who will be serviceable in the Silver League and will probably be good in the Bronze League. So not a bad pickup. Um, Maybe this is the type of guy you want to slide to the bullpen in a year or two. If you're, let's say you're Winnipeg, right? So you want to make drive up to the Premier League, and that's the long term plan for this guy as a lefty. Um, and then a move was made by Atlanta. Oops, we're gonna go back to the Atlanta acquired my boy Wes Copping. I say my boy, but he really kind of upset me. Um, I kind of had higher hopes for him. I mean, he pitched well, 3.3 ERA and 3.23 ERA. Um, he is someone who really has not been. You look at his ratings, and then you see that he's been a below average pitcher by ERA plus and a league average pitcher by FIP, and you're like, but how? And he has a contract, and this whole contract is now owned by Atlanta, which for a pitcher like this, he's going to eat up the Bronze League, and he should eat up the Silver League as well. Um, Good acquisition by Atlanta, and I'm not just saying that because he got him from me. But I don't even think he paid all that high for him. I got Solis and this guy who's probably not like a. I mean, cross your fingers on him, but you're not giving up a whole bunch for Copping. I think he might have thrown in like a second or a third or something, but um, I think for a Bronze League team, Wes Copping is like your ace. Who else does Atlanta have? Godin. He's better than Godin. Maybe not as good as Uso. They should be in the same tier. The movement is going to help out Uso. Um, let's take a look at Victor Tello, who's a lefty. I like that. And then John Clark. Yeah, so I think this is the second best starter ERA in the Bronze League. Jeez. No offense. Maybe that's something mean to say, but I look at John Clark and I'm like, yeah, he would not start a game for me ever. But he's pitched well. Maybe I'm being a hater. I mean, at the end of the day, I'm the worst team in the Premier League. I shouldn't be talking shit, right? He throws strikes. He doesn't give up home runs despite the 40 movement. I don't know much about Atlanta. Do they play in like a they play in a league average ballpark? I have no idea how. Um, where was I supposed to go? I have no idea how that dude does not give up more home runs, but he has done that historically. So I guess he just doesn't give up many home runs. I'm done being a hater. I still like Atlanta, um, and this is, I guess that kind of wraps it up. Let's just go back to the overall view. Those are all. I hope most of the bigger acquisitions. I do think we really only have New York and Phoenix. I mean, who knows? They're within 2 games. I mean, you're within 4 games of the playoffs and the relegation series in the Premier League. It is just very tight. So I guess anything's possible. But Kentucky and we are definitely sitting in the bottom of the barrel. These 3 are definitely safe. I think the Silver League's pretty much set up top. Carolina and Vancouver, they might flip a little bit with Houston and Chicago. But other than that, Miami's definitely getting relegated along with me. Galveston's probably going to win. And I think other than that, it's kind of tight. So we are fairly confident that we have our final, 5, 3, and 4 teams that are in it. The deadline, right now it's Monday. The deadline is on Wednesday night. So I'm sure that the next week in review would be a little bit more spicy. Hopefully, I'd love to see, some big deals happening. But right now, I would say that the way that the league works is very top heavy. When you look at DC, Toronto, and Cleveland's rosters, they're just crazy talented. And that's one of the reasons why I'm okay with getting relegated, because I can't compete with that. The only way I'll be able to compete with that is to, rebuild the same way that Cleveland did. Because, Toronto's managed not to rebuild, but they're also like far more aggressive than I am, which is a good thing. That's why they're in the Premier League and have never left the Premier League. But, I guess that'll wrap it up. Thanks for hanging in there with me. Hopefully we'll be back to our regularly scheduled program next week. All right, thanks.